Welcome to today's Audit Tuesday. In this session, uAttest will spotlight the latest D.o.D update on the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, also known as the CMMC program. To help explain the subject, we have a D.o.D expert, Jeff Chao of Short Arm Solutions. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Bill. Hey, Garrett.
Greetings, happy day.
Yeah, so Jeff, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me back. I thought after the last time you would never invite me back, so it's good to be wrong every once in a while.
Well, what we did
My
is
name
invite
is
you back, but now we're going to have other people ask questions too. So there you go. And I just wanted to say, thanks a lot, Jeff. All good. Bad joke.
uh, Thanks a lot, Bill. Thanks.
There you go.
My name is Jeff Chao. I'm the CEO of a company called Short Arm Solutions. We are essentially a value-added reseller, and our go-to-market is that we help small to mid-sized businesses, primarily small to mid-sized businesses, with their governance, risk, and compliance, especially in the areas of business continuity, incident response, and disaster recovery planning. After that, after we do a deep dive on your company, which is very illuminating to a lot of clients. We help the clients continue that maturity journey by bringing to bear over 200 companies that have various products and services, which will help those very same clients continue on their cybersecurity maturity journey.
Yeah, thanks for that. So let's start from scratch. What exactly is the CMMC and why should federal contractors care?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. You just mentioned it, but it's worth repeating that it's called the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, because it's now become a living document where it starts as a framework for all cyber, all government contractors increase their cyber maturity as well as their resilience. And now what they've done is they've instituted a much more mature set of rules in order to require these government contractors to be able to certify themselves in a way that is a third party as opposed to self-attestation, which they've done in the previous version. Just to give you a quick example of that, CMMC level 1 focused on a 17-point self-assessed cybersecurity practice, while level 2 is now requiring 110 practices, which are now going to be required through a third-party assessment, third-party independent assessment. So that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's starting in 2025. The rules go live later in December, and here we go.
So can you elaborate on the specific phases?
Absolutely. So broken down, there's 4 phases. Each one is going to take 1 year. That was actually a modification from earlier where the government originally intended to have them go out on a 6-month rolling cycle, but quickly determined that that would present challenges to a lot of folks. So they extended it to a year. So phase 1 is going to be in 2025, which is essentially still based on self-assessment, both on the CMMC level 1 and level 2 reporting. But they're going to start introducing at their discretion level 2 C3PAO certifications as part of the 48 CFR rule set, but it is not currently going to be enforced for 2025. This is a good way for government contractors to dip their toes because we all need to start beginning what that elevated journey looks like. And before it becomes actual requirements, we're going to need some time to not only understand and implement, but as well as dealing with third-party assessment companies coming together and working with the government contractors in order to get them done compliantly. It is, my last note on that is that it is possible in 2025 that some of these DFARS clauses for 48 CFR will be required in certain select contracts, but right now that is again at the discretion of the DoD as to whether or not they want to implement those. So that's 2025. Fast forward to 2026, we are looking at CMMC level 2 certifications being required. And again, a lot of these are moving parts, right? You're going to hear us talk a lot about how the DoD has discretion in a lot of their own rule sets for the first few phases, because honestly, we just don't know how well it's going to roll out. And so while the level 2 certifications are going to be required, again, the DoD has the discretion to implement or not implement those in certain contracts. Those contracts might be defined as immediate need contracts, where if the providers that are bidding for those don't have the CMMC compliance, that they may choose to waive that in order for the contractor to win and implement that contract. That's phase 2, 2026. Phase 3 then, of course, comes in 2027, and this is where things get fun. We now have CMMC level 3, although it is again at the discretion of the DoD. But once we get into the rule sets, and we can a little bit later on if there's enough voice in the audience to kind of geek in and really understand those. Level 3 gets complex. The 4th phase is going to be in 2028, which is going to be the continuation and completion of the full rollout of all the previous requirements and certifications by the end of 2028. What's particularly interesting about that is that this also aligns with the current renewal certification process for those that got accredited in year 1. And so we're going to be looking at the full implementation as well as the first round of companies to get recertified during the year of 2028. So again, here we go. At the discretion of the DoD, we'll see what happens. So there you go, in a wrap up.
So this is a compliance framework that DoD is putting on defense contractors to ensure cybersecurity standards and practices that are being upheld.
Yep. It's very clear what those requirements are going to be. And you also heard me say that the actual dates of implementation, the guidance will come from the DoD to provide some wiggle room in particular cases. And I guess if you read between the lines, one could infer that this would allow for some leeway and pushback by not only the contractor, but potentially the government, depending on the things that they need and they need now. So I joke, and I would use my hear no evil, see no evil, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's kind of a cover your butt, but there you go.
So what was that big announcement on October 15th regarding the final rule?
Yeah, it was the final rule. Thank you for the quotes. The industry had been expecting those to come down for over a year, but I guess one of the big deals of why it was important was not only due to the specificity within the framework of the things that need to be required, but when those need to be fully implemented, tested, and validated. So now we actually have a roadmap of what needs to be put in and when they need to be put in, and that was the place of uncertainty up until now. And I'm thinking through that question because the uncertainty is going to rear its head mostly in the smaller contractors. Like we all know the big boys, they're going to be ready. They've got unlimited funds. They've got all the human capital to get it done, and they will if and when they need to. But the SMBs are going to be a different story, particularly around not only the process and the requirements, but also in regards to the pricing in terms of the getting ready for the assessments, getting through the assessments, as well as correcting any of the oversights that may come as a result of those assessments. And right now we're at the beginning stages of that. And the C3PAOs are, for lack of better choice of words, trying to figure out where the marketplace is themselves. And so we're seeing these wild pricing structures that are out there. And yes, I mean, it's a known quantity. It will stabilize, commoditize, and go down at some point. But the key phrase is at what point is that some point? And before it does stabilize, likely those prices will continue to rise. And that's super relevant for a lot or a large portion of small, mid-sized contractors, because it's a drain on their finances as well as their bandwidth to become and remain compliant. And so when you hear things like that, a lot of people, the first thought is, can I afford to do this in terms of time and price? And that's a big question mark. So as ShortArm is now completing its end of year meetings with a lot of our clients, we're advising them, look, you guys have a slush fund for a reason. So earmark some funds for this, because we don't know where this is going to land. And because you know it's coming, it's best to get ahead of it as best you can. And the first part is to ensure that you have the funds and the people to go through this process. Because as our client, or with anyone, we just don't want to find ourselves in a place where there's a lot of unknowns and we don't know what those answers are, and we don't know how much it's going to cost. So the takeaway is earmark some money. It's coming.
Yeah, so these defense contractors should be taking this ruling pretty seriously.
I mean, the short answer is going to be, of course, yes. You know, it's hard for me to speak of the large companies because that's not our specialty. Our specialty lies in the companies that are a little bit smaller. And so, again, to repeat, it's important to start that process, right? Yeah, it's important, but start that process, because we don't know for each individual company, because everyone is unique, how long that process is going to take, how much it's going to cost, and where we can find some potential wiggle room in order to help you become and remain compliant. And even though 48 CFR, the next set of rules, is not enforced now, let's start that experience, that journey now, so that we know what it feels like when it becomes rule. I mean, the obvious, not obvious, but a really good analogy is, you know, if you want to learn how to ride a bike, could you read a book? Of course you could. You could probably learn to ride a bike by reading a book. But for most of us, the learning part comes when we get on the bike and we feel wobbly and we lose our balance and we probably fall down a couple of times. But once we do that, we know what that experience is like that we cannot get from the book. And therefore, when it becomes rule, law, regulation, we have that experience to draw from, and we can start to ride that bike faster and use less bandages. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks. Well, so CMMC demands that enterprises quantify their access to CUI, controlled unclassified information, correct?
Yeah. The short answer is always going to be yes. But a lot of times, maybe a more complete answer would be yes, it depends, right? Some of CUI is very clear cut, black and white, or as close as you can get to black and white. And there will be other situations that won't be black and white, and they'll be a little more gray, and we'll have to flush out what that information is in order to make the determination of whether or not it falls under CUI. And that's kind of the shameless plug for both short arm and uAttest on this call, because there's going to be a lot of investigation to determine what data is actually CUI and what could be considered not actually CUI, and therefore open to interpretation as well as adjustment if it's determined that it is truly CUI.
And Garrett, that's where uAttest comes in, correct?
100%, 100%. Because what we are is a tool, and I'm going to, be so bold as to actually show some slides here. But we are a tool that allows enterprises to understand and quantify their entitlements around CUI. Okay, now I'm going to try to do something in real time without screwing up. Okay, so here we go. First of all, always have a human as your first slide. This is a wonderful human. Okay, her name is Cynthia Stamer. I encountered her at a ISSA conference here in LA, and she got up and she's a lawyer, and she told y'all, and she told the CISOs out there. She said, "Listen, I can't defend you. I can't defend you if you don't have the evidence of what you're doing. You might be the best, security company in the world. You might be, amazing. You could be the enterprise that NIST is dreaming of. But if you don't have the evidence that you're actually doing the actual practice of security, then I can't defend you." And that's what we're doing, and that's what's quantified in the CMMC. That you, the enterprise, have done your due diligence around the CUI that the government is trusting you to do. Okay, and that's what CMMC is saying now, that you doing this. So let me get into it. This is all quantified. This isn't, CMMC didn't make this crap up. This is cut and paste from our friends over at NIST, writing principle of least privilege. One of the spots it's documented in, and of course there's 800-171, but is in the Cybersecurity Framework, CSF 2.0, and it's always referenced in 800-171 and others, that basically you will conduct an access review of who in this case has access to CUI. Okay, so that's what we do. We basically we are the product. We are the cloud-based product that does the access review. So how does this relate to your world? Okay, let me jump into it. Okay, so that's where we are. We are a cloud-based product that identifies ghost and orphan accounts used in multiple of these different compliance measures. Okay, our claim to fame is rapid integration. How does this actually work? Okay, so this is y'all out there. This is, hey, Garrett, I got a lot of things going on in my life, at work and besides, right? I got these regulations, guidance, frameworks. This is where short arm comes in. Okay, they help you quantify your regulations. They help you quantify your identity resources. And then what they do is they use this cloud-based product, uAttest, to ingest your identities and ingest your identity roles. Okay. And now they have one place they can start clicking buttons to do what? To do what Cynthia Stamer asked us to do, which was to quantify the access. Okay? Quantify the access to your resources in a documented way. That's what the regulation says, is that when the government, ask your enterprise who had access to the CUI, you can say these people had access, and they have access because I have certified that they have access, and these are the roles. And our product has all those great features like comment fields and delegation and auto delegation, etc. And we've worked this out with over 3.7 million attestations, so you can trust us. And it's a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant as well. Anyways, it creates the evidence. It creates the evidence. And this is what Get Smart would do. I mean, so this is what short arm would do to help you. This is what the short arm does to help you get this report and have it documented in your CMMC. Okay, that's what we do, and that's why we're partnering here. Our friends over here at Short Arm, they know the world. They is Jeff is dialoguing here. He knows the world. He knows the world of what CUI is, what the schedule is going to be like, what you have to be reporting, right? And then he utilizes the UA test for the tool for the purpose of just getting this really annoying, really boring, really egregious practice of a user access review in all the relevant resources. So just to kind of beat this slide to a death, on the left-hand side, that's where short arm is helping you identify not only the regulations, but your resources. What do you have to quantify? Okay. And then what the product itself is doing is our friends over at Short Arm are using this product to help attest to the roles and coming up with the evidence. All right, Bill. I think that's in a Garrett way answered your question of where we come in, right?
Yeah. Well, thanks. So, Jeff, do you want to add anything about the services you provide around UA tests?
Yeah, only just to coattail what Garrett said, right? So the caffeine is kicking in here. I'm hoping the analogies are working out here. The analogy for this one is, remember when we were little kids and we were in school and we were in math class and the teacher goes, well, here's the question. And be sure to show your work. That's what
Nice.
we're doing here, right? Is we're
Nice.
identifying what those compliance standards
Especially
are.
in the Chat GPT world, right? Sorry.
That's a
I hope I
whole
kissed
other
that.
Audit Tuesday.
I know. I just had to say that.
So
Yes.
what once we're able to identify those compliance frameworks that you, Mr. Client, have to adhere to, the software platform that Garrett and UAttest bring to, by the way, triple word score for you for actually using the word attest while describing your own product.
Oh, I have to. Got it. Yeah.
We'll document what those processes are so that not only you, but somebody like ourselves can come back in and layer the data on top of the clients to ensure that those compliance standards are really actually being met. And if there are additional action items that should or could occur in order to remain or increase that compliance, that's a managed service that UAttest could provide in the back end. And once that's actually done, we now have the audit trail to show our work for the compliance if you, the client, are ever questioned for that in preparing for an assessment. So the C3PAO is going to love you because not only did you get the right answer, but you showed your work completely to get to that point, and compliance follows. Everyone's happy. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to do something different. We're going to open it up to the audience for questions on all things CMMC, D.o.D contracts, NIST 800-171, etc. So I have one right here. It says, can you help me understand what is covered under CUI?
Yes, but we can sit here on the call and rattle off the things that are considered CUI. Most of those items are going to be applicable to most people. Some of them, as I think we previously discussed, might be questionable. And that's where doing a further discovery of your company, the data that you hold, where it's being stored, how it's being transferred, who sees it, when they see it, is required to get to the crux of, does this qualify what the government considers CUI? Because there are specific cases where if you look at something at face value, it appears to be CUI, but if you look at the underlying complexities that are involved, there is an absolute case to be made that it's not CUI and therefore not covered under the attestation that is required for that group of information. So that's a really long-winded way of getting to a self-plug of both Garrett and myself, where if we are able to better understand your business model and your information, we can give you a specific answer that applies to you.
All right. So, how long is the process taken to get CMMC?
A long time. Preparing for the third-party attestation can take generally 12 to 18 months, depending upon the complexity of your business. The actual product process of the attestation, if the preparation was done correctly, 3 to 6 months. The variables that we are now starting to see, which we covered a little bit earlier, is the pricing structure, right? Because this is a brand new, not a brand new, but it is essentially a new process that is now been clearly defined. And so the cost of both the preparation as well as the certification can vary quite widely and can arguably get very expensive. And so the better you can prepare, the more documentation you can provide. Logically, that would mean that your actual certification process will be easier and therefore potentially less expensive.
All right, here's one for you. So the former administration, 2016 to 2020, there was a great deal of emphasis on deregulation. Do you have any concerns that this may impact or delay CMMC 2.0, including extending compliance deadlines, weakening requirements, or simply focusing on other priorities?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody can deny that. Up until now, even with the current administration, a lot of people prior to the final rule coming down have adopted the kick the can attitude, right? Because if my toes aren't immediately on fire, I got other things that are burning my toes. And so now that we are looking at an administration change and some of the rhetoric that has come from them previously, we certainly have to continue that. However, the reasonable and smart response is that we need to proceed that they will go as planned. And so if I were sitting at a dinner with friends who happen to be government contractors, I might say, let's do as much as we can now from a bandwidth perspective, from a cost perspective, in order to be prepared for the implementation to go as planned. And if things change and they extend, weaken, whatever, you are going to be ahead of the game and ahead of your competitors when it comes to actually seeing these requirements in contracts. And so it will help your maturity regardless. It will help you protect your own data as well as the government's, whether it's actually law now or will be at some future time. But everything that you do now will help everyone in this process.
Okay. Another question. What is the 48 CFR rule?
I mean, how long do we have for this podcast? It's the next evolution of 32
So
CFR.
we have another 15 minutes. So
There you go.
if
The short answer is 48 CFR is the evolution of 32 CFR, which is the current rule set which applies to CMMC. And this will be implemented over the next few years. First, not as a requirement, but then later as a requirement. The actual rule sets are significantly more in-depth. The requirements to become compliant are arguably 4x tougher. So if we're back sitting at that dinner amongst friends, I would say, well, let's dig into your situation. Let's understand where you are now on that journey so that we can make whatever requirements that will apply to you. We can come up with a plan to get you as client as you need be to continue winning contracts and not step outside of the bounds in terms of any of those rule sets. But as a business owner myself, that last part is the most important part, at least to me. Yes, there are stringent requirements. Yes, we need to follow them and exceed them. But from a business standpoint, I myself would personally say, what do I need to do to continue winning contracts? Because I don't want to waste time or money doing things that I might not need to do. I need to win contracts to make money and grow my business.
Right. So what exactly is going live in November?
I mean, a lot. Actually, the first set of rules is actually becoming active, I believe, December 16th. And the congressional review process begins in early January, is expected to last about 60 days. So those are the dates that are the ones to be examining at this point. The engagement in December, and then what comes out of Congress after that 60-day review period starting in January.
Okay, I see. One more question. So are all companies, large and small, required to comply with
Absolutely.
CMMC if they're doing business
Yep.
with
100%.
D.o.D?
100%. I answered part of that question a little bit earlier about what do I need to do to ensure that my company continues to win contracts. Um, the second part of that response is a little deeper because it involves what's known as ESPs, or external service providers. So even if you, the government contractor, is CMMC compliant, or at least on your way to be and continuing to win contracts, most SMBs at least, and most likely large corporations or companies, will use sub vendors. They will use in addition to being a prime, they'll use other suppliers to help them fulfill all the requirements of the contract. So as an external service provider, there is a flow through of what CMMC needs to be required by those external service providers, and whether or not those ESPs can meet those standards, because that is going to make a determination of whether or not a prime is going to utilize a particular sub vendor or not. And it is generally those smaller companies, which can, in a lot of cases, have a more difficult time in attaining that compliance. And so therefore, there's going to be some shuffling. And when those smaller businesses are not able to comply, there is a very real possibility that they will lose business. And that in itself is unfortunate for the sub vendor, but it can actually affect the prime as well. For instance, if a prime wins a contract because of a special set aside or a special circumstance, women owned, sub zone, veteran owned, or some other set aside group, which the government is mandated to providing opportunities to, is not able to meet that CMMC compliance, and that prime is not able to use them, it is possible that that prime will lose that special set aside, and that can affect them as well negatively. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is it depends.
All right. Well, Jeff, we really appreciate your time today. Why don't you tell the audience how they can get a hold of Short Arm Solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to figure out if there's a way that we can work together with all the folks that are listening. My name is Jeff. My email address is jeff@shortarmsolutions. I'm the CEO, so the buck stops with me. I'd love to hop on a call and see if there's a way that we can help. And if we can, let's go, because this is a large and complex issue, and all business owners are in the business of doing business and making money. If you can find somebody to help you take care of the other stew, why not? So we're here to help.
All right, great. And then you can, UATest can be reached at our contact page at uatest.com/contact-shortarm. And and it's listed in the LinkedIn chat. So please copy that and reach out to us. Thanks,
One last
everybody.
thing I'll say,
Yeah,
sorry, Bill. One last
no,
thing
go
I'll
ahead.
say is Bill and Garrett and myself were discussing putting together a one sheet that will be available shortly about a matrix to help you, the viewer, increase your knowledge and potentially figure out where the areas that you feel that you need to attack first. So that will be available shortly. If you wanted to reach out to either of us, again, Jeff at Short Arm Solutions, we're happy to share that with you. And if nothing else, hopefully that will provide you some more uh, meat to chew on and come up with intelligent questions on how you can continue your journey to CMMC compliance. Sorry, Bill.
No, that's great. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.